presenting your host for the Racecoin podcast, Jay.
Welcome, Racecoin fans. I'm here with Spencer Pumpelly, an American professional race car driver who's a pilot, a vegan, a musician, a father, and a husband. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. And I hate to correct you, but it's actually Pumpelly.
Pumpelly, sorry about that.
That's okay. My wife, when we got married, she's now learning all the fun parts of being a Pumpelly as well.
Exactly.
So
sorry?
I said it's been 10 years since we've been married, but it still surprises her how often people, the creativity in which they get it wrong. That's
yeah, of course. It's I guess it's a lifelong thing to deal with now. But so I mean, you're doing so many things, right? So put these in order of your let's say priority list of, being someone who is a driver. You've got a family, you've got, hobbies like being a pilot and music and all these other things. So tell us a little bit more about what's the order of priority for these things for you.
Well, I guess first off, obviously, it's going to be husband and father. I don't think you can prioritize one of those versus the other.
Yeah, of course.
And it's tough because as much travel as I do, it's very difficult, being away from home a lot of times, especially, certain times of the year, it gets really crazy. But that's always priority number one. And then I guess it would be a race car driver. I try not to define myself too much by racing. I like to do lots of different things, but that being a full-time job and all the coaching I do, and I wouldn't say race car driver as much as just a racer, someone who's at the track, whether I'm driving or helping other people. It's part of the effort there. My wife would probably be annoyed because I always pick up the guitar around the house, but number three is probably a runner or an athlete. I like to run. I like to do some of the 10Ks and 5Ks locally. And then...
is this like a weekly thing?
Yeah, I try to run, 2-3 times a week. Or sometimes it's gym time, but for the most part, I have to be fit for racing. So
yeah, of course.
Running seems to be the easiest to do when you're on the road. I can always pack the running shoes and Joe, do a track walk for me turns into a track run. We do those every week. And then the big Peachtree Road Race comes up every year in July. It's the biggest 10K in the world. It happens to be right here in my hometown of Atlanta.
Awesome.
Take the subway up to the start line, and the finish line is about a block from my house. So.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. And then, of course, they publish all the times, and all my buddies and everyone in Atlanta does it. It's such a big event. So it's very there's unofficial bragging rights as far as soon as you're done, you can check your buddies' times and see where you are. So.
Nice.
It's in the top 1,000 the last couple of years, which is kind of my goal.
How many people race?
60,000.
60,000. Wow. Okay, I didn't see that coming. Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I do. And then the helicopter flying, I really enjoy it, but I don't get an opportunity to do it very often. I hold a commercial helicopter pilot's license here, and it's just something that's not very practical. And since I've had kids, it's low on the priority list. But I enjoy aviation. I have lots of different interests, and I try to enjoy everything life has to offer. Is to some extent, even though I can't really commit as much as I'd like to some things.
Yeah, as in, let's just get into some of that. So you've obviously grew up watching your father race, right? And what kind of impact did that have on your career, your racing, and what you wanted to be when you grew up?
I think I grew up in Northern Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C., and auto racing wasn't a really big deal in that area. There was no karting to speak of. None of my buddies in high school ever cared about car racing. Mm-hmm. So I think the fact that he was racing and he take us to the racetrack when we were kids, I think that had a lot to do with me getting involved in it, getting kind of the knack for wanting to be around it. Probably the most formative year was when he raced GTP cars in the late 80s. He did one season where he did the full championship driving a Ford Zaxby Probe in the GTP series against 962s and a Nissan and Jaguar XJR9s and some of the big names. And Bobby Rahal was always out there, Price Cobb and Jeff Brabham, and you see some of the cool names that were out there. Bob Wallach. Yeah, I really enjoyed that series, and I was probably 12, 13 at the time. So just very impressionable, and that's kind of. I just decided then that that's what I wanted to do.
I guess he didn't force you into it at all, right? From the sounds of it, just so that you looked up to him, you wanted to also have that feeling as well at some point. Yeah,
it's actually the opposite. He told me, that when I finally brought it up, when I got my driver's license, I said, "Hey, let's go buy a race car." He just, no, that's not smart. That's not a good way to spend your time. And keep in mind too, this is this is probably the mid '90s, so there was still a good amount of danger in racing. Guys were still getting killed. This is pre-Hans. This is pre, safer barrier. This it was a dangerous time. So I think he had some hesitation, but I committed to it. It was something I clearly wanted to do, and so once he realized that, I think he's been supportive as much as he can. And my mom too. She is equally supportive. When I was a kid, they separated early on, so it was kind of two different camps. But she kept saying, if that's what you want to do, you need to pursue it and pursue it as much as you can. She didn't quite have the ability to help financially, but
yeah, correct me if I'm wrong though. You started back in 1996, right? So it's been over 20 years since you've been in the sport and doing this. When did you first step into that car, and what was that like for you?
In 1995, I did a Skip Barber Racing School. It was what they called back then the 3-day school.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not knowing anything up to getting your competition license in 3 days, and it was obviously a ton of fun and I enjoyed it and it was a dream come true. But it was kind of weird because in my mind, I dedicated every waking hour to getting to that point. And then, you get into it and things just don't feel the same like you thought it would, or there's a little bit of
In what
subtle,
sense?
I don't know, just the cars, you're laying down in the car and it's loud and it's bumpy and just things you don't think about. And it took a little while to kind of feel comfortable in it. But once I kind of got, you're used to driving a street car at age 16, or I guess I was probably 19 when I did the school. So I had 3 years of driving my Isuzu Trooper, SUV around, sitting up, soft, bouncy.
Yeah.
Stick shift was a mile long when you shifted the thing, and
Yeah.
you could install it. And now you're in this little thing that shakes and vibrates and makes all sorts of weird noises. And and you're laying down in it and you can't see out of it, and you have a helmet on. It just, but that aside, it was a dream come true. But as soon as it was done, as soon as those 3 days were up, the question is, now what? Now what do I do? And so I kind of decided I don't care how I get to where I want to go. I just know that the next step is to come back to Skip Barber and do a race. So I found a way to make that happen. I kept just trying to go next step. And then that's how it all began.
So this, career of yours has progressed so much that you're on the road, like you mentioned, for like a month at a time. And how does that affect your vegan diet? Like, are you in a situation where it's harder to keep it up in certain places, in certain areas, in certain countries? Like, does that affect it?
Certain areas for sure. I mean, there's some places like my favorite track in the U.S. is VIR.
Mm-hmm.
It's Danville, Virginia, which is pretty. It's a rural area, and there's not the same type of options you'd find at, say, Austin, Texas, when you go to COTA. Austin is a vegan mecca, whereas VIR is pretty much barbecue joints and southern cooking. So there's certain places, but the thing is that you go to the same racetracks over and over again. So, for example, I brought up COTA. When I go back to Austin, the question isn't where to eat. The question is, I've only got 4 nights here. How am I going to choose between the 20 places I want to go eat?
Okay. Yeah.
The 4 that I have. And I think, after a couple months once I committed to being a vegan, you just kind of learn where to go and it becomes easy. A couple months into it, you don't really even think about it. The first month is tough.
How long ago did you become?
This is coming up on 9 years this summer.
9 years. Wow.
I've been vegetarian for coming up on 15 years.
You didn't actually start on the Veganuary kind of series when
No,
it recently became a bit of a fad.
Yeah, my dad was my dad had heart issues.
Okay.
And so that kind of got me thinking about different ways to eat and live. And I thought, he's having these issues now. Maybe now if I start living better and start thinking about, my health now, then down the road, it won't be an issue. And sure enough, my cholesterol's come down over 100 points. I'm lighter, I'm fitter. Some of it's because of the fact that I work out and I've committed to being fit, but I think the diet's a big part of that.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, 10Ks can only take you so far, right? Diet's a big part of it. And, you're on the road so often. So obviously you're staying away from family, staying away from your wife and kids. So how is it, how do you kind of still do the best you can to fill the role of a husband and a father while being away on the road so often?
Well, one of the cool things is I do live in Atlanta, which is a Delta hub. So when I actually, this month I have been on the road a lot, but I also do get to come home between events. So, for example, this weekend I'm going to shoot to Laguna Seca. I'm going to leave on Tuesday or tonight, which is I believe it's Tuesday today. All the travel starts to blend together, and then I'll get home I'll take a red eye home Saturday night, so I'll have all day Sunday. So for the most part, my trips are 3 to 4 days, and they involve, getting back home each time, and having a, direct flight everywhere really helps minimize the time traveling.
Of course.
That being said, it is tough if I have to do a 2-3 week stint. And so I try to set the schedule up to reduce that. But when it happens, you try to connect on FaceTime, you try to stay in touch, try to do what you can. And then when you come home, you try to take advantage of every second you're with family.
Yeah, of course. It's one of these things that it's almost never enough, because you have a job that obviously involves you going away for periods of time, I'm sure. And then how do you manage to squeeze in holidays? Like how many do you manage to get a year?
A pretty good amount. One of the nice things about being a driver is that when you're busy, you're obviously very busy, but you do have a couple months of downtime. And even, when I'm home, I got a little bit of follow-up work to do and prep work to do for the next event, but I do pretty much enjoy some free time between the races, and then in, December.
Especially winter, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think especially if you can secure your next year's, jobs.
Yeah, sponsorship and events. And,
relax and enjoy the holidays. If you're still searching for something to do, come, first and Daytona testing's, a couple days away, can be a little stressful, but.
Of course. And how do you then balance the whole coaching aspect? Because now, as someone who is taking care of others as well, not only yourself, does that make it harder to kind of spend more time on yourself, focus on yourself? Or is that, almost polishing up your skills while you're teaching?
I think the teaching for me has been, especially when I first started racing, I got a job working for Skip Barber, and that's really what helped my career get started. But coaching and teaching taught me a whole lot more about driving, I think, than being a student at Skip Barber. Trying to formulate to newcomers, how all these concepts that you have in your head and that you've been taught, you don't really know if you know them until you've been challenged by a student asking, hey, you said this, but you also said this. How do those two things go together? The first couple of times you get asked those questions, you make up an answer, and it sounds somewhat decent, but then you go home that night and think, yeah, I really don't know the answer to that question. I need to know that because I'm going to get asked that again. And so you tend to broaden your knowledge base a lot. And I think it keeps, racing to me it's always problem solving. There's always a problem, or a challenge, and trying to find solutions to that challenge, whatever it happens to be, whether it's trying to get a driver to go faster or trying to get your car up, put the power down, or trying to fix a weird brake system, or trying to get a team to work together well. Those challenges are all very similar. So the more time you can spend kind of dealing with those, I think the better. And that's what coaching is. You're not the one driving, but you're still trying to address the challenges of the day, and you're still broadening your knowledge base. And I think that's nothing but a value. So
has that ended up actually improving your driving as well?
I don't know about improving my driving necessarily, but I do think it's improved my approach to the weekend. I think that, driving is a small part of what a race car driver does if it's done right. I think, you've got a lot of different roles to play. And I think, the coaching helps just broaden the knowledge base. It helps you with your time at the track, and your relationships, your focus, your bag of tricks, that thing.
So what is in your bag of tricks? Let's expose some of these right now. Like, tell us what is your secret weapon that you use to try and make sure that you're always on the top.
That's a good question. It changes. It changes every weekend. That's the cool thing about racing.
So no one can ever know.
Yeah, you go like last 2 weeks ago we were at Sebring, and Sebring is bumpy as can be. And our car, when we unloaded it, was absolute junk. I mean, it was going over the bumps so poorly that we had to, on our test day, we had to just kind of commit to taking a line we knew wasn't the fastest line, because it avoided the big bumps. Yeah. Because we were so bad over the bumps, we were going to crash. In fact, we got thrown off the racetrack. Me and my co-driver Randy Lally and John Potter, we all had some interesting moments. So that challenge and what we used to fix that, and I got to give Andy credit for that. He's the one that kind of came up with. I really think this is going to be the way to go, and sure enough, it was. And we showed up and we had the fastest car on the track come race day. That's going to be a different challenge than say, if you are trying to sort through some sort of engine or differential or issue like that, or if you're just trying to tune to get more time. But I'll tell you what my big secret is. Anytime I've been successful, it's because I've had good people helping me with the engineering, helping with the car, helping with everything else we're doing. So if you really want to know what Bag of Tricks is, that's
Look at the humility. Look at that humility. It was just like, I mean, it
No,
was like you're ready, and you know, obviously it's true. As much as I'm, you know, playing around with it, it's very true that, you know, it is a team sport, and, you know, people only see you guys, you know, behind the wheel and on TV, and see that, you know, that's the only kind of portion of it they get to see, right? Whereas they don't really get to see the behind the scenes part. And so talk us through some of that. Like, what kind of things do you think people don't get to see, which are some of the most crucial aspects as to why you as a team get to win?
I think when you watch a car drive by, it looks like it's going around a corner. I think the amount of drama that's going on inside the cockpit that only the driver really knows and feels, that's something that I wish the fans could know. I wish they could see, but they, you know, even when I'm watching cars drive by with, you know, knowledge of what it's like to be in that car on that exact track, you just don't get the sense for what's going on inside. So, I think behind the scenes, you know, there's always a challenge with your car. There's always a challenge to try to make it comply. And the guy that wins the race, guy or, you know, or gal who wins the race, is the one who's got the best car. I don't think I've ever won a race that was hard to win. Some of the easiest days I've ever had were days I've won races, just because things are working so well and it's not really that tough. Some of the toughest days I've had on the racetrack ever are, you know, days I finished 12th, 15th, you know, where I'm just working as hard as I possibly can to keep a car on the track that's trying to kill me, all while I'm watching everyone else drive away. That's the toughest. And I don't think people understand necessarily how much the team aspect is. And we talk about it all the time, you know, in our interviews and things like that. But it's really because it's true. You've got to have good people and good equipment and well organized processes to get that all to come together in mind.
So what are you thinking about when you're on the track and when you're actually driving? It's one of these things where, you know, are you crisis handling? Obviously it varies depending on given situations where your position is, but does it really change? You know, if you're in first place, what's going through your head compared to if you're in 17th place? Like, what are the variations?
Well, I think a lot of it too is I'll know pretty quickly in a race whether or not the car I have is a good car and it's capable of winning. And sometimes that's us, sometimes that's balanced performance, and unfortunately, that's just part of our sport. You know, throughout a season, you're going to have good weekends and bad weekends as far as you know, the rule makers are concerned. But my thought process is, you know, it's kind of small picture and big picture. Small picture is specifically right now as I'm going through this corner, you know, what do I need to do to maximize my speed and keep the thing on the racetrack? You know, and then I also think big picture, and that's things like, you know, how much is left in the stint and how much of my tires how much have they degraded?
How much can they give? Yeah.
Yeah, and is that consistent? You know, do I feel like the tires have about half life left and I've got about half stint to go? Or do I feel like they have quarter life left and I've got 3/4 of stint to go? You know, do I need to adjust? I'm thinking about strategy things. Like, for example, 2 weeks ago, I was running behind a Vilander and a Ferrari at Sebring, and we were fighting for the lead, but I knew he had to pit 5 laps before we did, and I knew we were able to make it to the end on one stop, and he wasn't. So I knew we didn't really need to pass him. We just needed to let that race run and play its game and play out, and we would have had the advantage. Unfortunately, we got a yellow, and that didn't work out exactly, but had it, I'm thinking long term. I'm thinking, you know, what
Tactically.
Yeah, tactically, what is important right now, and in that case, it was not important to take the lead. It was important just to keep the car going and stay, you know, right where we were, and I was happy to do that. Now Andy later got in the car, and you know, his job was different. He had to pass to win. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to do so because we got a late yellow. But you know, you need to understand the situation. And so I'm thinking small with really specific. What's going on right now in this corner with the car? How is it balanced? You know, if I add throttle, is it going to get loose? Is it going to push? You know, am I going to stay on the road if I continue? And then it's big picture thinking too. And I think all the good drivers are very good big picture thinkers as well.
And I guess that's a skill that you develop over experience. And, you know, naturally you've managed to win the Rolex 24 twice, the Petit Le Mans twice. You know, there's so many victories that you've had. So talk us through some of your most memorable moments during this and, you know, what it's really meant and how that's kind of also transformed your way of thinking about the race.
Yeah, the Daytona 24 I won in 2006 was pretty much my first big win. I'd wanted to win Daytona ever since I watched my dad race there. I think I went there the first time in 1981. He was driving a Ferrari 512 BB, and it was just the coolest thing to be at Daytona and watch the cars drive. And I always hoped to race in Daytona, and then as a kid I thought, man, I just want to be part of the deal.
Yeah.
But then you get there and you start getting with good teams and good equipment, and you think, man, if things go right, this could be the year. And then that happens a couple times, and it doesn't go right, and heartbreak is on top of heartbreak. You just have so many times where you think, gosh, I woulda, coulda, shoulda. And to finally have it all come together in 2006 was pretty cool. And then the cool thing about that too is the second place car was my good friend Andy, and we were able to beat him. And then in 2011 we actually got to drive the same car, and we got to win that race together. So and then he returned the favor in 2012. I finished second, he finished first. So those have been cool. And I mean, I think the big races like Daytona or Petit. Petit, another probably one of my most memorable wins, also happens to have Andy involved. But it was just one of those weekends where it was pouring rain the entire weekend, and we started the race, got a lap down early. We're somewhat lucky to get it back. I think the teams ahead of us pitted when they really didn't need to, but that gave us the opportunity to get back on the lead lap. And then I got in, and I just seemed to find my path through the puddles better than everybody else. And next thing you know, like I'm moving through the field, and we knew that with that much rain, it was either going to go half distance and get checkered, or whatever was official. Mm-hmm. We knew it might go till nighttime and then checker, or it might actually, they might run the whole thing. Mm-hmm. But we had a couple red flags in the middle when the rain got real heavy, and so we were kind of thinking we should probably try to be in the lead at half distance and at nighttime. We ended up second half distance, and they red flagged it, and I thought, oh great, this is it. And Lally was in the lead. I remember thinking, you little, and I was coming too. That was the thing, I had the best car, and I thought, man, we're not going to go green. I ran him down and just kind of started to make looks when it goes red. Yeah, he's going to win this thing. But sure enough, we go back green, for another hour, and then it got dark and they checkered it. And in that time, I was able to pass him and take off, and I think we won by a decent chunk, or we would have had we not gone yellow and then gone checker. So that was a real memorable one too, because that was the first big win for Park Place, and I got to win the race with some good friends. So there's been so many, and the takeaways are that every time you go into a big race like that, I've been fortunate enough to do Le Mans a couple times. It's just it's always an adventure. There's always going to be challenges you don't expect, challenges you could never expect.
Yeah, new drama.
Yeah, and it just having people that you can rely on, whether they're co-drivers or strategists or managers or engineers, crew guys that can get things fixed that shouldn't have broken, that have never broken before, that no one really knows how to fix, but they come down pit road and they go right to it, get it sorted, and off you go without even losing more than a couple seconds. Having those type of people are very valuable, and that's why the success I've had.
It's true. I mean, let's like switch it up a bit in terms of the topic. What I'm seeing, for those that can see on social media, is one of your guitars in the background, right? So when did you start playing? There you go. Oh, there's loads. Okay. So when did you? Oh, there's even more. It just keeps going. So when did you start playing the guitar? And I mean, for all the fans out there, I'm sure they would love to hear maybe a quick demo.
It's too early for that. I'm actually not a great guitar player, but it's one of those things when you remember when Guitar Hero came out and you had that 5-fret 1-string plastic guitar.
Yeah.
My buddies and I all, when somebody got it, and I'm like, oh, this is stupid. This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And then at 12 hours later, it's daylight. You got a pile of beer cans up on the coffee table, and wasted half your life playing this stupid plastic guitar. My wife said, just get a real one. It's like,
did she end up regretting that decision?
No, I don't think so. I mean, but so I started playing around with it a little bit, and then when my son got old enough, we would just jam to like AC/DC. He had a little plastic
Mm-hmm.
ukulele he got, and he would play, Daddy, let's play Rock Stars, let's play AC/DC. So we would, instead of Wheels on the Bus or, all those children's songs, we would listen to, Motley Crue, Guns N' Roses. And
Nice.
I noticed, like, this kid knows all the words to all these songs. And he's 3.5.
And I'm so proud.
Yeah. It's like, I'm thinking, like, let me try to play these. And, we have an acoustic guitar, in the living room. I just pick up. I'm like, yeah, I think I can do this. So I put a couple songs together, and we went down to what's called the Atlanta Beltline, which is a glorified bike path that we have. That's old railroad lines that circle the city. And then now they've been turned into, bike lanes, and they've really connected the neighborhoods here in Atlanta. It's pretty cool. A lot of people walking around. And I got a little amp and a battery with an inverter and a little microphone for him. And we just went down and started playing our songs, and we just got tons of people would stop and listen. So we started a little band.
Wow, that's awesome.
Got my daughter into it too. And now they're too old for the band. He's 6.5 now, so he's got way cooler things to do than play music with Dad.
Fair enough. Everyone grows up, right? And on that note, actually, you've obviously had an amazing racing career. So as a backup career, you've always got music, right? And potentially even flying. But what about considering, maybe you've been suggested it before that you look a little bit like Gerard Butler. So maybe you could go into the movie industry.
Hold on, I gotta Google who?
Gerard Butler. 300. The guy that goes, "This is Sparta," and he kicks that guy.
Oh, okay. I've not seen this, but yeah. Okay. Right.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe the music career as well. I mean, sorry, the movie career industry.
Yeah, I never thought of that, but yeah. Okay.
There you go. So many options. But nonetheless, seriously, Spencer, it's been amazing having you on the show, and thank you for coming on and sharing your stories and your journey and inspiring the fans.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was fun to catch up, and I look forward to hopefully doing it again someday.
Cool. Thank you for being on the RaceCoin podcast. I'm
Spencer Pumpelly. You can follow me on Twitter at Spencer Pumpelly and Spencer_Pumpelly on Instagram. That's SpencerPumpelly. Thanks.